Happy 1st of April. I've got something to tell you. And I'm not going to dilly-dally with any big dramatic build-up. I'm just going to get right to it. Since it is April 1st, I did think about trying to mess with you a little bit, try and have a little fun with it. But I kind of already did that with that whole Camry video, so we don't need to go down that road again. Instead, I'm just going to show you right away what I got. And if you're a regular to my channel, you know that I really enjoy making like dramatic trailers and sort of building up to a dramatic moment of some sort. But I'm just going to go ahead and skip it this time. Instead, let's cut right to the chase. After all, this has really turned out to be a much longer, drawn-out process than I expected to. So the last thing you need is any more delays in finding out what I'm going to be driving next. And ultimately, it's not that groundbreaking, it's not earth-shattering, it's not some really incredible, amazing surprise. So really, there's no good reason not to just show you right away. Those of you who watched the live stream that Lucy and I did, where we talked about the fact that the Forester had been totaled, probably already got a sense that I was looking beyond Subaru. And I did really seriously consider getting another Forester, the same Forester that I had before, because I knew things that I would do the same as my previous Forester, and I also knew things that I would do different, and I had some other ideas that I had been planning to do on the Forester. There were a lot of good reasons to get into another Forester. I don't get very many opportunities to buy a new vehicle, so when the chance comes up, I definitely felt a certain desire to try something new. And there was nothing wrong with the Forester at all. It was a great car. It went every place I wanted it to go. I have no regrets about owning that car. Really, the only issue for me with the Forester was the camping on overlanding trips. The Gazelle tent was great, but setting it up and breaking it down every single day, especially in wet and muddy conditions, was becoming tiresome. And I considered a rooftop tent on a Forester. In fact, if the Forester hadn't get wrecked, that's probably what I was going to try to do next. But there are still some things that I don't like about the rooftop tent setup, and I wanted to explore some other options. If you have a Subaru, or even if you possibly bought a Subaru after watching my channel, that's fantastic. They're wonderful, wonderful cars. I'm behind them 100%. I could see owning another one in the future. In fact, as Lucy comes up on driving age, we are considering a Subaru for Lucy to drive around. So stay tuned, because there may be more Subaru on this channel. Okay, for real this time, I'm gonna show you what I got. I had to mess around a little bit because it's April 1st, but for real this time, there it is, it's right over there.
It's right over there. There it is.
It's a Nissan Frontier. This is my 2011 four-wheel drive Nissan Frontier Pro 4X Crew Cab. I bought it last Friday, and I'm really excited about this new chapter. Coming up in this video, I'm going to tell you why I've opted for a 4x4 pickup, why I chose the Frontier, some additional details about this truck, and what I envision going forward. So I think a pickup is an interesting platform for a number of reasons. First of all, it's simply a very, very common, easy to find vehicle, and regardless of your budget and your needs, you can find a truck that size, configuration, and price that can work for you. And the mods that I do to this truck are not necessarily brand specific. They will be things that could be done to virtually any truck that you find. Another thing I find interesting about the pickup truck platform is that there are a number of ways you can adapt it for camping. You can, as I'm currently doing, just use the bed to haul your camping gear, your tent, your sleeping bags, your cooking stuff, whatever. Throw it all in the back. You could also sleep in the back with a truck tent. You could put a rooftop tent on it. You could build out some kind of canopy topper. You could get one of the countless camper options. You could even custom build your own solution, or you could tow a trailer. Well, to begin with, it's not a Tacoma. And that's not to say anything bad about Tacomas. Tacomas are great trucks, but they're everywhere. They're all over YouTube, they're all over Instagram. I see them every single time I go out. The Tacoma has such a reputation, even a mystique, that it tends to command higher prices. For the amount of money I spent on this truck, I would have ended up in a Tacoma that was several years older and with much, much higher miles on it. Getting into a Frontier allowed me to get into something newer with lower miles for the money. And yet the Frontier has essentially the same reliability ratings as the Tacoma. In fact, in some places you can find it rated higher than the Tacoma for reliability. All of my research and even conversations with people who own Frontiers led me to the conclusion that this is a really solid, capable, reliable truck that the people who own them absolutely love. One thing I love about the Frontier is how it still has the clean, basic look of a pickup. In recent years, other trucks seem to have grown taller bodies, less glass to see out of, and increasingly aggressive styling, which serves no practical purpose. The Frontier has remained unchanged for the past 15 years. One of these is a 2005 Frontier, one is a 2011, and one is a 2019. Now, I've seen criticisms of Nissan for not moving this design forward, but I think it's really just a case of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's a clean, timeless truck design. Ultimately, the last thing YouTube and Instagram needs is another Tacoma Overlander. In fact, for that matter, YouTube and Instagram don't even need me as a Subaru content creator. There have been so many Subaru channels that have popped up lately that even though I'm no longer driving a Subaru, if you're looking for Subaru content, there have been a ton of new channels that have popped up really producing some nice content. And at the end of this video, I will highlight some of those for you and help you find them. My hope is to produce content that is universally useful regardless of what you drive. And of course, more backcountry adventures to amazing places. The Pro 4X is a step up from the standard Frontier four-wheel drive and comes from the factory with upgraded Bilstein shocks, metal skid plates down the length of the underbody, larger tires, and a rear locker. So this truck is equipped with 265/75 R16 tires. That is the stock size for the Frontier Pro 4X. The regular Frontier actually comes with a slightly smaller tire. Here's how they compare to what I had on the Forester. This is a 215/75 R15. I did test drive one Pro 4X with a manual transmission, but the one I bought is equipped with their 5-speed automatic transmission. The ground clearance is a little better than a stock Subaru. At just under 10 inches at the lowest point on this skid plate here. About 9 3/4 inches at the lowest point on the rear diff. This is actually a little less ground clearance than my mildly lifted Forester was sitting at. In order for this to be a safe, practical, and comfortable vehicle for traveling with both of my kids, I did only look at crew cab models. One of the things that appealed to me about getting into a four-wheel drive pickup is that this is basically trail ready right off the lot. It's basically as capable, if not more capable, than my Forester without me doing anything to it. Most other vehicles that I might have had to consider would have required adding some suspension mods, full-out four-wheel drive conversion, a number of things to get it ready to get out on adventures. I've lost a lot of time this year already, and I want to be out there. I don't want to be in the garage or in the shop for several more months trying to get a vehicle ready to go. This, as it sits, can go out on the trail. Now, are there things that could be improved? For sure. The first mod, as I've been promising for months, is going to be a dash cam. It's the first thing that's going to happen to this truck. And I've actually already got it. I'm trying to get that installed this weekend. Also, this time around, I want to take some steps to try and protect this vehicle a little more than I did with the Forester. When I got the Forester, I had no idea what I would end up doing with it. And gradually, bit by bit, the paint got basically destroyed. The interior got very beat up. So I'm going to try and think ahead this time. Definitely get some seat covers in here, figure out something to do to protect the paint, whether that's a vinyl wrap or some other solution. And then, since it's basically ready to hit the trail, my next priority will be to get my camping situation figured out. The goal here, as I mentioned earlier in the video, is to get out of the ground tent on overland trips. Now, I think for the first month or two here, I'm probably still going to be toting the Gazelle tent around because I don't have another solution at the moment. But I have some ideas of how I'm going to get this set up for overland travel, and hopefully by the time next fall and winter overland trips come around, I'll be better prepared for inclement weather. I will definitely need to be making use of the roof rack on this truck. So one of my modifications will include fabricating some sort of rack up here to accommodate the things that I plan to carry on this part of the truck. As you've possibly heard me say many times before, there's no such thing as having too much light when you're out on the trail at night. So lighting is definitely something that I'll be addressing on this truck. I was able to salvage all of my lights off the Forester, and I will certainly be reusing at least the Diode Dynamics lights. I'm not sure if I will put the aux beam light bar on this vehicle or look into something else. I was pretty happy with the setup that I had on the Forester, and I'll be probably more or less replicating that, though I do have a couple of other ideas for what I'm going to do with the lighting on this truck. As you probably know, I'm not a big fan of all the plastic on the front of modern vehicles. I'm sure some of this will be going away. One of the mods I was planning to do very, very soon on the Forester was to get a winch on the front of it, and that will be a fairly high priority here too. I do like to travel solo, and a winch is really a good bit of self-recovery equipment to have. So there'll probably be some changes up here, at the very least some sort of a winch mount, and possibly a little more than that. Eventually some kind of rear bumper as well. Oh, that's definitely a lower priority. It would be nice to get the spare tire out from underneath here and up on the back, especially if I want to eventually get some larger tires on this truck and to be able to carry some other things on the back instead of elsewhere on the truck. And while this truck has reasonably good clearance as it is, it's certainly good enough to get me down 90-95% of the types of forest roads and BLM roads that I travel. It would be nice to gain a little bit more clearance, get it up a little bit higher. These trucks also simply look better with just a little bit of lift on it, maybe just a couple of inches, and that may also help accommodate some larger tires, which will help get the rear differential a little bit higher off the ground as well. I think it's roughly a 31-inch tire. I have seen people run 33s on these. That's of low priority for me at this point. I think this truck is gonna get virtually any place that I want to go for the moment. Plus these tires are like new, so I'm not gonna look at spending any money on tires in the near term. All right, so that's basically everything I'm gonna cover about the truck in this video. I know many of you were hoping for another Subaru. I hope that you understand why it made sense for me to move on to something else. I know this channel gained popularity in part because of the Subaru, but at the same time, I gotta do what makes sense for me. I'm not gonna let the YouTube channel decide what I do or don't do in my life. And this was what compelled me at this point in my life, and so here's where we are. I think you'll find that the channel will change very little other than what I'm driving. There's still going to be backcountry exploring, overland adventures, DIY stuff, looking for low budget solutions. So I hope even if you were here for the Subaru, you'll give it a chance. If not, I totally understand. There's certainly been channels that I've stopped following myself because somebody switched vehicles and I just was not compelled by the new vehicle. So I totally get that. As I mentioned earlier, we are considering a Subaru for Lucy and Colin to drive around, and so there could be more Subaru content back on the channel fairly soon. I would also like to encourage you to check out some of my YouTube colleagues who are doing Subaru content. I will list them here, and I will put links in the description below. The last thing I'm going to talk about here, just because so many people have asked me about it and I promised that I would talk about it, is why this took so long. My Forester was wrecked in mid-January. It's now the beginning of April, and I've just now got a vehicle. There ended up being a number of complications in this process. Every single step seemed to take another week off. I was constantly waiting for this person or that person to get back to me. I was constantly having to place phone calls to follow up to keep the process moving forward. But the truly complicating factor was that somewhere down the line, someone made a mistake on the VIN of my Forester, and the insurance company was looking at information for an older Subaru with higher miles. They were comparing the initial repair estimate to a car with a much lower value. When that mistake was discovered, they decided, oh, your Forester may be repairable after all. Please bring it down to the shop and let them proceed. So that took yet another week because the shop couldn't get me in right away. I had to wait another week to get the car into the shop. So I got the car down into the shop. Another 2 weeks went by. I didn't hear anything. Finally, I followed up and said, are you guys making any progress on the car? And they said, oh, we're waiting for approval from the insurance company. So it sat down there with basically no work being done on it for 2 weeks. And no one reached out to me to say, you know, hey, here's what's going on with your car. So several hours of phone calls later, it was ultimately decided that after the body shop had taken a closer look at the car, it was indeed a total after all. I then had about another week for all of that to get processed and to get paid for the Forester. Fortunately, I did get fairly compensated for the Forester. I'm happy with what they gave me. The next delay in all of that was simply finding the right vehicle. Now, at that point, I had pretty much zeroed in on the Nissan Frontier as my next vehicle. The problem is that these are really hard to find, and I'm in a fairly small market here in Eugene. Not very many of these come up, and the ones that do come up were often too new and out of my budget, or too older than what I wanted to get into. And the handful of vehicles that would come up either here in Eugene or up in Portland or over in Bend, where I traveled to both of those cities in order to look at trucks, as well as looking at trucks here in Eugene. I had several trucks that were good possibilities that ended up getting bought right out from underneath me. In fact, in one case, I was at a dealership to drive a truck. Someone else had just barely beat me to the punch, had driven the truck, came back from his test drive, pulled cash out of his pocket and said, I'm buying it. He didn't even try to negotiate the price down. So I ended up spending several weeks trying to find the right vehicle. Anyway, that's a long story, but I promised to explain why that whole process took so long. Now, it's time for the channel to move on. We are going to get back to some adventures, exploring the most remote corners of Oregon, beautiful places across the state, and in 2021, hopefully getting beyond Oregon to some other amazing places in the West. I hope you'll come along. Thank you for watching the channel. Thank you for your support, and see you soon. I did get out on a little mini adventure with the Frontier last weekend, and I'll get that up on the channel just as soon as I can.